This guide has been inspected and approved by Luminous.
Hey guys, this is SUNSfan and welcome to the official Dota Cinema Guide to Skeleton King. If you aren't familiar with this hero, you may want to watch the introduction we did for him at the corresponding link. Skeleton King, otherwise known as SK, and of course not to be confused with the other SK, is a strength carry hero who's famous for only having one active ability. And according to many sources, he's also the most manly hero to not have testicles. Skill build. First things first, maxing Hellfire Blast by 7 is a must. It's your most important skill as it will provide you a stun and a slow all in one. Usually at levels 2 and 4 you'll want to get stats, since you're so mana deprived early in the game. You will also want to have enough mana for your ultimate, Reincarnation, which you'll level at the standard 6, 11, and 16. Next, you'll focus on leveling Critical Strike. In some situations where you're getting 100% free farm, you might want to get this in place of stats, but for general purposes just start leveling it at 8. Last but not least is Vampiric Aura. Generally it's not as useful until you get some damage, which is why you leave it for last. Also, you don't really want to level it during the laning stages since it will push the lane. Item build. Starting for Skeleton King are branches for eventual wand and your basic regeneration. A Quelling Blade is also an option if you feel you won't get harassed in lane, otherwise just stick with the Stout Shield instead. Boots of choice are Power Treads. Being able to switch between intelligence and strength could be all the difference in a fight. Phase boots are good for chasing, but you're foregoing too much in the stats department, so we can't suggest using them. An optional item on the list is a Soul Ring, which is really only needed if you're going against mana burners. Popping this right before you die will allow your ult to trigger. Before we get into the core items for Skeleton King, I have to note that items such as the Battle Fury and Midas are viable in situations where you're getting great farm and want to further increase it. Generally though, you won't see these picked up. To fix some of your mana issues, pro players tend to get a Force Staff. This might seem a little bit weird on a strength hero, but it will add some much needed initiation to your arsenal. Even with a relatively low cooldown stun/slow, you'll find that Skeleton King suffers from the same fate as most other strength heroes, in the fact that enemies will tend to get away with very little HP. After this, probably the most important item to get in order to finish up your core is an Armlet of Mordigion. This will give you a ton of survivability, damage, and attack speed. Also, your Vampiric Aura is so good that you can literally just leave your armlet on while farming without fear of losing any health. Into the luxury items, an Assault Cuirass is an amazing item to get since it provides you great attack speed, armor, and adds extra punch to your crits with a negative armor aspect. A BKB should also be looked at if you're getting locked down in fights. For some more tankiness, you can go for a Heart of Tarask, or in the DPS department, a Desolator or MKB will do the job. Lastly, this is probably the only hero that this will ever be mentioned for, but a Divine Rapier is actually somewhat viable on Skeleton King because of his reincarnation. Gameplay. This is considered one of the easier heroes to play, mainly because you only have one active ability. But once you start getting some farm, you may be adding some extra buttons with the possibility of getting a wand, Power Treads, Armlet, and Force Staff. Because of this, Skeleton King becomes a little bit more complex and positioning will be of the utmost importance. Hellfire Blast is your nuke, your disable, your slow, all in one package. It's very reliable and only has an 8-second cooldown at all levels. The only thing you need to be aware of is the mana cost. 140 may not seem like a lot of mana, but you'll always want to make sure you have enough for reincarnation. When you have items like a wand or soul ring, this becomes less of a worry. Vampiric Aura can be very strong. Unfortunately, it only works on melee units, which since you picked SK, you probably won't have more than one more melee on your team. And even if you do, they probably won't be much of a right clicker. But regardless of that, 30% lifesteal is absolutely insane. To give you an idea of how good it is, in comparison, a Satanic when not activated gives you a 25% lifesteal. Add to this that the aura is completely stackable with other orbs, makes this one of the best late game auras in the game. Keep in mind that even though this guide is for a laning Skeleton King, with early levels of Vampiric Aura you could potentially become a viable jungler. It's just not very common to see. As for Critical Strike, there isn't much to talk about. A 15% chance to crit for 2.75 times your damage is pretty awesome. Let's compare it to some other non-ultimate critical strikes in the game. Brewmaster's Drunken Brawler gives a 25% chance to crit for 2 times damage. while Chaos Knight deals 3 times his normal damage with only a 10% chance to crit. And lastly, of course, we get to Skeleton King's ultimate, Reincarnation. It starts off as an extremely long cooldown of 260 seconds, but will eventually get whittled down to a very short 60-second cooldown. Remember that once you're reviving, you will slow enemies in your area for 4 seconds, which has its benefits for continuing a fight. Getting Silence will not prevent you from using this, meaning the only thing that can prevent you is not having the 140 mana available. Also, in situations where you're doing the most damage on your team and keeping you alive is of the utmost importance, putting an Aegis on you isn't the craziest thing ever. In fact, if played right, can be a huge boost to your team. The reason for this is that if you die with an Aegis, your ultimate will activate first. This means that if a fight lasts long enough, you could feasibly die 3 times and still live to tell the tale. In fights, there isn't too much to go over since you only have 1 active skill. Because of that, positioning is what we'll briefly mention. With an item like a Force Staff, or in some rare situations a Blink Dagger, they will allow you to be an initiator. Having Reincarnation should provide you enough confidence to not care about taking damage the first time around. Just be wary of who you're focusing, as going for the wrong target can turn the fight into a messy chase that your team won't appreciate. Friends and foes. Heroes you should choose in conjunction with Skeleton King are those that can hold down heroes so he can just pound away in peace. Since this is so general, we'll stick with heroes that will allow you to have a pleasant killing laning experience. AA with his Cold Feet in combination with your Hellfire Blast will set up some easy kills, while Veno's plethora of slows should keep enemies in check. Also, to go along with disables and slows, heroes that provide some damage amplification such as minus armor should also be considered great teammates. Tidehunter and Vengeful Spirit are 2 such heroes. On the other side of the coin, heroes that Skeleton King should try and stay away from are pretty obvious. Mana burners. This would include the likes of Anti-Mage, Nyx Assassin, Invoker, and Outworld Destroyer, just to name a few. One special mention does have to go out to Silencer himself though, since his Curse of the Silent is devastating to SK, who cannot spam anything but Hellfire Blast to take off the debuff. Also, heroes that don't care that your strength will hurt quite a bit. Lifestealer, Ursa, and Huskar are great examples of this. Thanks for watching, guys, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube. Also, a big thanks to FlawlezZ and Luminous who helped create this guide. You can check them out at their YouTube channels, which are